After sacrificing everything to fund my husband's education, he used his degree and a betrayal to humiliate me at my own graduation party. My revenge left him begging for mercy. Before we continue, I would like to ask you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a comment about where you are watching from. Let's go back to where it all began. After a decade of relentless sacrifice and steadfast commitment, the day I had been dreaming of had finally arrived. Graduation day. Each year had been a step on a steep, winding path, with my eyes fixed on this summit. Today, I wasn't just graduating. I was claiming a victory that was years in the making. As I stood before the mirror, adjusting my cap, I reflected on the long nights spent studying by the dim light of my desk lamp, the endless rows of medical, books, and the countless cups of coffee that had become my closest companions. The reflection staring back at me was not just a student in a gown. It was a survivor, a warrior adorned in the armor of education. Walking across the campus to the auditorium, I felt the weight of each step, heavy with the gravity of what this day represented. Every hardship endured, every obstacle overcome, had led to this moment. The whispers of the leaves in the gentle morning breeze seemed to applaud my perseverance, and the sun broke through the clouds as if to spotlight my arrival. As I entered the auditorium, the hum of expectant voices filled the air, a symphony of anticipation that resonated with my own heart's racing. My fellow graduates buzzed with excitement, their faces alight with the promise of a future that was now within reach. But for me, this day was more than a transition. It was a transformation. The ceremony began with the procession of faculty, their robes flowing behind them like banners of honor. I took my place among the sea of caps and gowns, each of us a story of triumph. As the dean began to speak, his words painting pictures of success and contributions yet to come, I felt a deep sense of pride swelling within me. When my name was called, it wasn't just a name, it was a declaration. Each syllable echoed through the auditorium, rebounding off the walls and etching itself into the air. As I walked across the stage, my heart soared as cheers and applause erupted around me. This was my moment, my hard-earned spot in the limelight. Holding my diploma, I turned to face the crowd, a sea of faces that included proud parents, teary-eyed friends, and inspired underclassmen. In that glance, I acknowledged their support, their belief in my potential, which had fueled my journey. This diploma was not just a piece of paper. It was a testament to a decade of sacrifice, a passport to new beginnings. As the ceremony concluded and I stepped outside, the world seemed to greet me anew. The air was fresher, the sky clearer, and the possibilities limitless. I had done it. Not only had I graduated, but I had also sculpted myself into someone capable of facing any challenge, equipped with knowledge, fortified by experience, and ignited by a burning ambition to heal and to help. Today marked the end of a chapter and the beginning of an adventure. As I looked forward to my future, I knew that this success was not just a personal triumph, but a beacon for all those who dared to dream big and work hard. My journey had taught me that true success was not just about reaching a destination, but about the resilience, determination, and spirit you developed along the way. With my diploma in hand and my head held high, I stepped into the sunlight, ready to take on the world, my world, which I was now more prepared than ever to make a better place. The glow of my graduation day, that hard-earned triumph, seemed to light the very path to our celebration party. It was supposed to be an evening of joy, a gathering filled with laughter and congratulations. Peter, ever so supportive, had arranged the party at our favorite venue, a place that held memories of happier times. The evening air was warm, the setting sun casting a golden hue over the garden where our friends and family mingled, sharing in the culmination of my decade-long journey. As I moved through the crowd, my heart swelled with pride and gratitude. Little did I know, the evening that began with such promise would take a turn so bitter, it would forever taint the memory of my graduation. Peter had been slightly aloof throughout the day, which I attributed to his usual shyness at social gatherings. But as he took the microphone for the toast, his hands trembled noticeably, and there was a hesitancy in his voice that caught me off guard. Confusion swept through me as I tried to meet his eyes, searching for the man I knew, the man I loved. "Ladies and gentlemen," Peter started, his voice echoing slightly over the garden stillness. "Today, we celebrate not just a graduation, but a remarkable journey of dedication and resilience. Elena, my wife, has shown us all what it means to truly strive for excellence." His words started typically enough, but the pause that followed was laden with a tension that drew a hush over the crowd. "I stand here before you all," he continued, his eyes finally meeting mine. They were not filled with pride or joy, but something else, something that chilled me to the bone. "I stand here to announce that our paths will now diverge." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a wave of unease that mirrored the turmoil beginning to churn within me. Peter's next words fell like a hammer. "I am leaving Elena for someone else, for Grace." He gestured to where Grace stood, a younger woman whom I recognized from his office parties, her presence now taking on a new, sharp significance. The shock was palpable, a physical blow that knocked the air from my lungs. The clinking of glasses stilled, the laughter died, and all that remained was the shattering of the world as I knew it. The betrayal was not just personal, but public, stripping me of my dignity along with my happiness. Guests averted their eyes, the discomfort evident in their shifting stances and whispered words. The evening air, once warm and welcoming, now felt cold and biting. Peter's declaration, made in front of those we loved and respected, was a brutal finale to what should have been a celebration of my greatest achievement. I stood frozen, the noise around me fading into a distant echo. My vision blurred with unshed tears. My mind raced to piece together the signs I must have missed. How could the man who had been my rock through the toughest times suddenly be the source of my deepest pain? The rest of the evening was a blur of motions, a puppet show in which I played a part without understanding the script. I moved through the motions, smiling when expected, nodding when prompted, all the while feeling a growing void where my heart used to be. As the guests began to leave, their eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and discomfort, I realized that the night had not only marked the end of my academic struggles, but the beginning of a much more personal battle, a battle for my self-worth, for understanding, and for a future that was suddenly as uncertain as the look in Peter's eyes when he severed our vows in front of the world. The sting of public humiliation at my own graduation party was a wound to my heart, but it did not cripple my spirit. Instead, it ignited a flame of determination within me. Lying awake at night, replaying Peter's cold announcement, I couldn't help but suspect that there was more to his betrayal than personal infidelity. His actions were too calculated, too public, and intertwined with Grace's sudden presence in our lives. It all hinted at something deeper, something nefariously hidden beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. As the initial shock waned, my resolve hardened. I was a trained medical professional, skilled in diagnosis and analysis, and I decided to apply these skills to unravel the mystery behind Peter's drastic actions. There had to be a rationale, potentially linked to corruption or misconduct, that could explain the abrupt end to our decade-long marriage. The question wasn't just who Peter had chosen over me, but why? What could possibly make him risk everything we had built together? The first step in my quest for justice was gathering information. I meticulously began to comb through our shared financial statements, emails, and other personal records that I had previously overlooked. My attention was particularly drawn to anomalies in Peter's recent behavior, unexplained withdrawals, secretive phone calls, and an increase in private meetings with unknown associates. These threads of suspicion led me to consider the broader implications of his work. Peter, a senior administrator at the hospital where we both worked, had always been involved in the murkier sides of healthcare management, dealings that I had naively assumed were standard bureaucratic necessities. Now, each of these instances took on a sinister hue in my mind. Could Peter be entangled in unethical financial or professional practices? Determined to uncover the truth, I reached out to a few trusted colleagues discreetly, hinting at my need to understand unusual patterns in hospital finances and governance. While many were reluctant to speak openly, the pieces of the puzzle slowly began to fall into place. There were murmurs of discontent, hints of unsanctioned dealings, and whispers of funds allocated to dubious projects. Each discovery propelled me further, fueling my resolve to dig deeper and seek justice. I was not just a wronged wife seeking personal revenge. I was a member of the medical community, committed to integrity and the well-being of our patients. The potential corruption at play was a betrayal not only to me, but to the entire institution we served. With each piece of evidence, my plan to confront the reality of our situation grew clearer. I knew the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was prepared to face them head-on. The pain of betrayal had transformed me, sharpening my focus and fortifying my will. Elena, once merely a devoted wife and dedicated doctor, was now a woman on a mission to expose the corruption that had shattered her personal and professional world. My quest for clarity led me straight to Peter's personal laptop, a device he had always guarded jealously. But in my turmoil, I found the courage to breach his private digital world. It was a decision driven by a growing suspicion that the secrets held within his files could unravel the mysterious circumstances surrounding his betrayal. One chilly evening, as the house lay silent and the world outside seemed to hold its breath, I powered on the laptop. The password, once shared between trusting spouses, granted me access, and I delved into the depths of Peter's digital life. My hands trembled, not just from the cool air, but from the anticipation of what I might discover. Began methodically, sifting through emails, financial statements, and personal notes. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a series of communications between Peter and Grace's father, a well-known figure in the medical community whose reputation was as polished as it was untouchable. The emails were cryptic, laced with jargon that seemed innocuous to the untrained eye. But to me, a doctor, they screamed of unethical practices. The deeper I dug, the darker the revelations. I uncovered invoices for pharmaceutical supplies that far exceeded the hospital's requirements, contracts for clinical trials with unusually lucrative terms, and payments made to shell companies I knew only existed on paper. It was clear that Peter and Grace's father were embroiled in financial fraud, leveraging hospital resources for personal gain. But the financial discrepancies were just the tip of the iceberg. Hidden in a folder cleverly disguised as mundane hospital administrative files, I found documents outlining experimental medical procedures that were performed without proper patient consent. These were high-risk, high-reward gambles that violated every principle I upheld as a medical professional. My heart raced as I pieced together the magnitude of the deception. Grace's father had used his influence to shield these activities, with Peter as an eager accomplice, drawn in by the promise of wealth, and perhaps swayed by his affection for Grace. The evidence was damning, a tangled web of corruption that implicated not just the man I had loved, but a pillar of the medical community. With each file, each email, and each transaction I uncovered, the sense of betrayal deepened. Yet, alongside this betrayal, a steely resolve formed within me. This was no longer just a personal vendetta. It was a moral crusade. The information on Peter's laptop was not just digital data. It was evidence of crimes that endangered vulnerable patients and corrupted the very essence of medical care. As I documented everything, backing up files and taking meticulous notes, the weight of my responsibility grew heavier. I knew that bringing this information to light would not just burn bridges, it would incinerate them. Yet, the path forward was clear. These shocking, Discoveries were not just my burden to bear. They were my duty to expose. Armed with damning evidence and a heart heavy with betrayal, I reached out to Dr. Helen Graham, a seasoned mentor whose integrity and wisdom had always inspired me. Over the years, Helen had become more than just a mentor. She was a beacon of ethical practice within the medical community, and I knew that her guidance would be crucial in navigating the storm I was about to unleash. In the quiet of her study, I laid out the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. Her initial shock at the revelations quickly turned to resolute anger. "We need to bring this to the hospital board," she declared, her voice steady with conviction. "And we'll need more than just these documents. We need corroborating testimonies from those who have been unwittingly complicit in these practices." Under Helen's guidance, we approached several of my colleagues discreetly. It was a delicate process, teasing out those who might be willing to speak out. To our relief, a few brave souls emerged, individuals who had noticed irregularities and inconsistencies, but had feared the repercussions of speaking against Grace's influential father. Together, we formed a coalition of the willing, a group of whistleblowers bound by a shared commitment to justice and integrity. Helen and I organized secret meetings, strategizing the best way to present our findings to maximize their impact and minimize the potential backlash. Each meeting was charged with a tense energy, as if we were all holding our breath, waiting for the dam to break. Finally, the day came when we were to present our case to the hospital board. The boardroom was austere, the long table a cold barrier, between us and the board members who sat in judgment. Helen opened our presentation, her voice resonating with the authority of her years and her unassailable moral compass. As I took my turn, I presented the emails, the financial records, and the testimonials from our group of whistleblowers. I detailed the experimental procedures conducted without consent, the financial fraud involving pharmaceutical supplies, and the contracts that siphoned off hospital funds into personal accounts. With each piece of evidence, I felt a mix of dread and determination. This was more than a personal crusade. It was a fight for the ethical soul of our profession. The board members listened, their faces masks of neutrality. But as the weight of the evidence mounted, I saw the facade crack, saw the dawning realization of the extent of the corruption that had been festering under their oversight. The investigation that followed was swift and thorough. With Helen's steady hand guiding the proceedings and the whistleblowers' testimonies providing irrefutable proof, the board could no longer ignore the rot within. Peter and Grace's father were called in for a series of grueling inquiries. The media caught wind of the scandal, and the story exploded, casting a spotlight on the corruption that no one could have anticipated. The hospital board, pressured by public scrutiny and the undeniable evidence we had provided, had no choice but to act. Comprehensive reforms were initiated, and those implicated in the corruption were suspended, pending further investigation. As I watched the events unfold, a part of me felt vindicated, another part profoundly saddened by the betrayal. But amidst the whirlwind of emotions and outcomes, I clung to a kernel of hope that in uncovering this corruption, we might prevent future betrayals and protect the innocent who placed their trust in our care. The exposure of corruption within the hospital's walls had sent shockwaves through the community, and while it initiated much-needed reform, it also marked the beginning of a perilous chapter in my life. Peter and Grace's father, cornered and desperate, shifted their focus from concealment to retaliation. The stakes were no longer just about preserving their careers, but about silencing the threat I posed to their freedom. As the hospital board's investigation deepened, the backlash I faced grew increasingly severe. Anonymous threats began to appear in my mailbox and email, each message more menacing than the last. "Drop the charges," one note commanded, its letters cut from various magazines, creating a chilling mosaic of intimidation. Another email warned, "This is bigger than you can handle. Back off, or you'll regret it." Despite the fear these threats evoked, I found strength in the solidarity of my allies. Helen, ever the stalwart, bolstered my resolve. "We must not let fear dictate our actions," she would say during our frequent strategy meetings, her voice firm, a testament to her unwavering commitment to justice. Moreover, the whistleblowers and I had become more than just colleagues. We were comrades in a battle against corruption. We met regularly, often in secret, and always with caution, sharing our experiences and bolstering each other's courage. Each meeting, each shared story, reinforced the necessity of our cause and the importance of standing together. But the danger was not just a shadowy threat. It became starkly real one evening as I left the hospital. A car sped past, its window rolling down just enough for me to see the glint of something metallic and threatening. The message was clear. My pursuit of justice had made me a target. Shaken but unharmed, I reported the incident to the police, who began patrolling the area more frequently, a small reassurance against the tangible danger that now accompanied my every step. Peter's transformation from the man I once loved into a vengeful antagonist was complete. He no longer sought reconciliation or understanding, but aimed to preserve his new life at any cost. Grace's father, with his extensive influence, was not just fighting to save his reputation, but also to maintain the control he had long wielded over the medical community. Realizing the seriousness of the threat, I took additional precautions. I changed my daily routines, secured my home with additional locks and surveillance, and even started taking self-defense classes. My life had become a chess game, each move calculated to protect myself and continue the fight. Despite these measures, the game turned more dangerous with each passing day. One afternoon, a close call with a suspicious package left at my doorstep, a package that, upon police inspection, contained a sinister warning inside, reminded me of the relentless pressure to cease my efforts. Yet, these attempts to intimidate me only sharpened my focus and hardened my resolve. Each threat, each attempt to silence me, added fuel to my determination to see justice served. It was no longer just about my personal grievances. It was about protecting the integrity of the medical profession and ensuring that no one else would suffer under similar corruption. With each step forward, with each moment of fear and resolve, I became not just a survivor of betrayal, but a warrior for truth. The dangers I faced were real and palpable, but so too was my commitment to fight, to persevere, and to ensure that the truth would not be silenced by those who wished to keep it buried. As the threats against me intensified, so did the resolve of our investigative team. The turning point came when we uncovered a trove of incriminating evidence that Peter had desperately tried to keep hidden. Among these were detailed records of falsified prescriptions and a network of hidden financial transactions that spanned beyond the hospital's walls. The falsified prescriptions were a particularly damning discovery. They revealed a scheme in which Peter, with the complicity of Grace's father, had been prescribing and selling high-value medications for non-existent patients. These prescriptions were then filled at select pharmacies, which were part of this illicit network, funneling significant sums of money back to Peter and his co-conspirators. But it was the hidden financial transactions that finally gave us the leverage we needed. Deep within Peter's encrypted files, we found evidence of offshore accounts and shell companies. These entities were cleverly disguised to launder the proceeds from the prescription scam and other fraudulent activities tied to hospital resources. The complexity of the financial web was staggering, but with the help of forensic accountants, we began to piece together the scope of the fraud. With this new cache of evidence, we approached federal authorities. The weight of the evidence was undeniable, and it spurred immediate action. Raids were conducted on Peter's office and the residences of several key figures implicated in the network. The authorities seized computers, documents, and substantial digital evidence that further corroborated our findings. The media frenzy around these raids brought the issue into the public eye, making it impossible for the hospital board or anyone else to ignore. Peter and Grace's father were now under the microscope, not just by the hospital board, but by national law enforcement agencies. During this time, Peter tried to reach out, perhaps in a bid to sway my actions with reminders of our past life together. but those attempts fell on deaf ears. My commitment to uncovering the truth was unshakable, fueled by every lie he had told and every life his actions had endangered. When the case finally went to trial, the evidence we had gathered became the cornerstone of the prosecution's argument. Witness after witness corroborated the data we had provided, painting a damning picture of systematic corruption and greed. The hidden financial transactions and falsified prescriptions were particularly pivotal, linking Peter and his associates to a pattern of criminal activity that was both sophisticated and extensive. As the trial progressed, the tables turned dramatically. Peter, once a respected administrator, now sat deflated and defenseless in the courtroom, his previous arrogance replaced by the reality of impending judgment. Grace's father, too, could no longer hide behind his influence and connections. The network they had relied on began to crumble under the weight of legal scrutiny and public outrage. The impact of their downfall was profound, not just for them personally, but for the entire community. It served as a stark warning about the dangers of corruption in healthcare, highlighting the need for vigilance and integrity. The legal ramifications for Peter and his associates were swift and severe. After a thorough investigation bolstered by the evidence our team had provided, Peter was arrested. The sight of him being led away in handcuffs was both vindicating and sorrowful. The man I had once loved was now a criminal in the eyes of the law and the public. In the wake of his arrest, the dynamics within the conspiracy began to shift dramatically. Grace, who had initially stood by her father and Peter, began to see the crumbling of the world they had built on lies and deceit. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the reality of her own legal peril, she made the decision to cooperate with the authorities. She turned on her father, providing testimony that implicated him even further in the network of corruption. Grace's decision to testify against her father was a pivotal moment in the investigation. Her insider knowledge and direct involvement provided the authorities with first-hand accounts of the schemes her father had orchestrated. This testimony was a treasure trove for prosecutors, linking loose ends and filling in gaps that only someone deeply embedded in the conspiracy could provide. However, her cooperation came at a great personal cost. The atmosphere around Grace became charged with tension and danger. Whispers of retribution began to circulate among those still loyal to her father, and even some who were simply afraid of what her testimony might bring to light about their own involvement. Tragically, just weeks after her pivotal testimony, Grace was found dead in her apartment under suspicious circumstances. The scene was initially deemed a suicide, but the quick succession of events led many, including myself, to suspect foul play. The investigation into her death opened a new, darker chapter in the saga, suggesting that the corruption and its protectors were even more ruthless than we had feared. The news of Grace's death sent shockwaves through the community and reignited fears among our group of whistleblowers. It was a stark reminder of the stakes involved in challenging powerful and unscrupulous individuals. Despite the protective measures we had in place, the reality that we were dealing with individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their interests was chilling. For me, Grace's death was a painful echo of the entire ordeal's cost. It was a reminder that the fight against corruption was not just a battle of legalities and evidence, but a dangerous struggle against a deeply entrenched power willing to go to great lengths to maintain itself. As the legal proceedings continued, the impact of our efforts became increasingly evident. Peter faced a litany of charges, from fraud to conspiracy to commit criminal activities. The trials, heavily covered by the media, served as a public reckoning for him and the corrupt system he had helped sustain. Throughout this period, the community's eyes were open to the vulnerabilities in our healthcare system and the dire consequences of unchecked power. The trials, while a closure of sorts, were also a beginning, sparking discussions on reforms and the implementation of stricter oversight mechanisms to prevent such abuses of power in the future. The trials and subsequent legal outcomes marked a significant turning point, not only for those directly involved, but also for the entire medical community. As the corrupt practices came to light and the key players were held accountable, a collective sigh of relief was breathed by all who had long been burdened by the hidden misdeeds. Yet, the journey did not end with the sentencing of Peter and the disentanglement of the illicit network. It was merely a prelude to a more profound transformation. In the aftermath of the trials, it became evident that preventing future misconduct would require more than just punitive measures. It required a systemic change to foster an environment of integrity and transparency. Inspired by the hard-won victory and fueled by a desire to see meaningful, lasting reform, I took on the challenge of spearheading the development of a hospital ethics program. Working closely with the hospital board, which had been shaken to its core and was eager to restore trust and credibility, we began crafting a comprehensive ethics program. This program was designed not only to enforce compliance with legal standards, but also to promote a culture of ethical consciousness and moral decision-making throughout the hospital. The core of the ethics program was a robust training module that every employee, from administrators to healthcare providers, was required to complete annually. These training sessions were interactive, designed to engage participants in real life, scenarios and ethical dilemmas they might face in their roles. By encouraging discussion and reflection, the program aimed to equip each individual with the tools necessary to make ethical decisions proactively. Moreover, we established a whistleblower protection policy that ensured any employee who reported unethical behavior would be shielded from retaliation. This policy was crucial in empowering staff to speak up without fear, knowing that their concerns would be taken seriously and that they would be protected. An ethics committee was also formed, comprising respected members from various departments within the hospital. This committee was tasked with reviewing policies, overseeing the training programs, and handling any reports of unethical behavior. Their role was to ensure that ethics remained at the forefront of the hospital's operations, influencing every decision and policy. As the program rolled out, the initial skepticism gave way to a burgeoning sense of community and shared responsibility. Employees began to feel more confident in their ability to influence positive change, and the atmosphere within the hospital shifted from one of secrecy and fear to one of openness and accountability. The establishment of the ethics program had a ripple effect beyond our hospital walls. Other institutions, hearing of our success in rooting out corruption and fostering an ethical culture, reached out for guidance on developing similar programs. It was gratifying to see the impact of our efforts spreading, inspiring a broader movement towards ethical practices in healthcare. Through these endeavors, the hospital not only regained its reputation, but also became a model of ethical governance. For me, the journey from uncovering corruption to establishing a framework to prevent its recurrence was a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of ethical leadership. With the establishment of the hospital ethics program marking a monumental victory in my quest for justice, I found myself at a pivotal crossroads. The drive for retribution had faded, replaced by a profound commitment to fostering positive change. My experiences, while fraught with challenges, had imbued me with a unique perspective on the vulnerabilities and potential for reform within the medical community. It was time to channel my efforts beyond the confines of my own institution. Inspired to extend the reach of my advocacy, I decided to leverage my story and the lessons learned to inspire broader reforms in healthcare ethics. This decision marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one focused not on avenging wrongs, but on proactively shaping a more ethical future. I began by writing a book detailing my journey, from the shocking betrayals to the triumph of justice. The book was not just a memoir, but a call to action, urging healthcare professionals everywhere to advocate for transparency and integrity in their practices. The response was overwhelming. My story resonated with many who had witnessed or experienced similar ethical breaches in their careers. Buoyed by the success of the book, I started conducting workshops and seminars across the country. These sessions were designed to educate healthcare providers on the importance of ethics and how to implement effective ethics programs in their own workplaces. The workshops also provided a platform for other whistleblowers and ethical champions to share their experiences, creating a robust network of professionals committed to ethical reform. Recognizing the need for a more formal structure to support these efforts, I founded an NGO dedicated to healthcare ethics advocacy. The organization worked not just on training and education, but also on policy advocacy, pushing for legislation that would ensure stricter oversight of medical practices and protect whistleblowers. As the head of this NGO, I collaborated with healthcare institutions, legislative bodies, and international organizations. Our initiatives gained traction, leading to the implementation of new policies and the revision of outdated ones. The focus was always clear: to ensure that the ethical breaches that had once shattered my world would not be repeated elsewhere. The journey also led me to engage with technology experts to develop software that could help hospitals and medical institutions monitor compliance and ethical practices more effectively. This tech-based approach allowed for real-time auditing and provided whistleblowers with safe, anonymous channels to report any unethical behavior. Through these years of advocacy, my life came to embody a cause much greater than myself. It was about building a legacy of integrity that could outlast any single person's career, including my own. As I reflect on the path that led me here, I realize that moving past revenge was not just about forgiveness or acceptance. It was about transformation. It was about using the lessons of the past to illuminate the shadows that still linger in the corners of the medical field. My efforts now are not driven by the pain of betrayal, but by the hope of prevention. The belief that through continuous effort and vigilance, we can aspire to a medical community that upholds the highest ethical standards.